32 teams, 16 shows. This is episode 3. We're going to break down briefly Houston versus Tennessee. We're doing this by week 17 matchup. It's easier to track that way, and because we're huge proponents of week 17 stacks. Welcome to the show.
What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. And as you can see, we're middle of best ball season, or actually we're kind of getting closer to the end here. So we're breaking down each team. We're doing 2 teams per show. We're pairing them up by week 17 matchup. If you don't believe in that, like Ellie was saying, fine, it's okay. But this is an easy way to organize it for us. And also, most of the time when we're drafting, we're going to run into ADP that reflects, if you got Derrick Henry, if you got D-Hop, well, you might end up in the next couple rounds finding guys in that range where you're picking. All right. So, Ellie, thoughts on Texans and Titans? Obviously, we'll talk about injuries, narratives. We'll do a breakdown. We'll look at all the ADP and everything like that. But, I mean, both of these teams probably aren't going to be very good. The Texans maybe can overachieve a little bit if they can catch some lightning with Stroud. But I'm just not too sure about either of these teams. To be honest, these are probably 2 of my lowest owned teams as far as stacks go. I'm getting some one-offs here and there, but I can't tell you of more than maybe 3 or 4 lineups where I have Houston stacks. And they usually come in on the back end. We're usually getting back end stacks with Stroud if you're desperate for a third quarterback or if you're really desperate for a second quarterback. So what are your thoughts on some of these teams, and how much are you getting of these teams? Because look, if they overachieve based on the ADP, you could come out looking pretty good.
So look, I'm going to be completely honest. I was getting a decent amount of Houston, especially a little bit earlier on. It was just so easy, and it still is really, to take CJ Stroud and wide receiver 1, 2. Nico Collins is a guy we'll talk about a little bit here, but back in May, yes, we've been drafting since May. We're not as degenerate as some of the other guys you see, but we've been drafting since May. You could get CJ Stroud at 150 or whatever, and stack with Nico Collins at 170. So it was so easy to take advantage of some of the Houston guys that I did get a lot of exposure to them early on.
Yeah.
But Tennessee, I think everyone kind of just sticks with the same thing. It's Derrick Henry. Get Derrick Henry, and then again, we'll talk about Traylon Burks here, but we saw some movement after DeAndre Hopkins. It's going to be an interesting offense. I think Tennessee, they were kind of going into a rebuild, and getting DeAndre Hopkins means that I think we're going to end up seeing Ryan Tannehill end up playing the season.
Yeah.
So it's a completely different situation than it was maybe a month ago. So.
Well, yeah, exactly. We'll talk about Tannehill. I mean, his ADP is way up because, well, we think that he's probably going to be the guy. And if he isn't the guy, it's probably because he really sucked ass and the season is down the drain, and they're going to throw in Levis, or I mean, they even have Malik Willis that is in in talks to be that backup dude. So who knows what's going to happen there. Let's get to our injuries. Ellie, I haven't really seen anything at this point in the year that. We got John Mechie coming back from leukemia. Hopefully he's at full strength. It seems like he is, but it's going to take him probably a little bit of time to get into that game speed. Who else, man? I haven't noticed anybody else at this moment. We're recording this on, what day is this? The 3rd? August 3rd? Nothing to talk about really, right?
Yeah, nothing worth noting. Again, that's going to change probably the moment that we get off the show, right? I think we talked about somebody on another show, and they ended up retiring after.
Sony Michel. It was before. Yeah, he retired when we were going on.
Yeah. So I mean, be mindful of that stuff. And we're obviously chopping the shit up in the Discord. So join in the Discord. We're going to be talking about this all the time.
Yeah, Discord.
Any injuries happen, we cry about it together very loudly for about 20 minutes.
That Discord is linked. It's free. It's down in the bio there. Just click on that, and it'll take you right into there, and you're going to hang out and talk with us for a little bit. All right, so narratives. All right, so, D-Hop coming to the Titans was a bit of a surprise. I mean, he was leaving the Cardinals and going to another situation that isn't maybe as good. I thought that he could end up in New England, Kansas City, Buffalo, get a dude towards the end of his career, pay him, and use him kind of like what they did with Odell Beckham with the Rams, sort of a thing. Just go out and buy the guy for a year. What are your thoughts on Hopkins here? He's still D-Hop. We know that. As Cardinals fans, we know this dude, potentially a top 5 dude at any given moment of any game. He's still that good. He's fallen off a bit, but he's going around that 39 to 40 range here. I don't know. Is that what do you think about that? Is that a little too high for him? Are people just a little bit excited because he's moving around? He's in the news.
I don't know, man. Like, I think there needs to be a little bit more of a kind of a middle ground between him and Traylon Burks. I don't know if Traylon Burks needs to be going as late as he does and Hopkins as early as he does. I don't know if there's going to be enough volume in the offense to feed that really. We know what Derrick Henry's going to do, right? And I just don't know how good Ryan Tannehill actually is to be able to feed DeAndre Hopkins consistently over the course of the year. So, I get some exposure to him. He's Nuck. He's DeAndre Hopkins, right? I don't think you're doing anything bad drafting him, but I just don't. I don't necessarily love this move for him. And kind of speaking of narratives, he was going to get the same amount of money in Arizona, probably a little bit more.
Yeah.
This isn't more of an incentive laden deal. So when we finally get to that Cardinals show, I'm going to talk about my theories around why I don't think Kyler is going to be playing this season. But like, why would he leave that team to come to Tennessee for less money if he wants to compete? Really? So like, I don't think that that offense really is just going to be as explosive as I always think it is. But again, it's just fun as hell to stack week 17 because they tend to beat the shit out of Houston every
Yeah.
time they play. So this is actually fun to talk about.
And Derrick Henry, he's the guy you want to get if you're looking to get that ass beaten on the other end. Okay, so Nico Collins here, he's up about 30 plus ADP. He started around 145. Now he's in the 114s. Why? Like, honestly, I like, there's no real news. I mean, this is kind of like Van Jefferson situation. Like, is it because now we're starting to see like the depth chart, we're seeing who's where, and he's clearly he's clearly the number one, I guess. So why is his ADP rising so much? And are you staying away from him with him trending up that much?
So I'll answer your second question first. Like I just got so much of him early on that I don't need to overpay at this point, right? I don't need to spend a pick that early to get him. I was getting him at 150. And by the way, our opening ADP is based on like June, the middle of June or something at this point.
Yeah.
And like I said, we were drafting it like May 7th.
Yeah.
So we were able to get Nico Collins at really high ADP or really low, however you want to say it, 180, 170.
Yeah.
So like I don't need to reach at this point anymore. Like we still haven't had any movement. Like there's been no movement on any of his other receivers. John Mechie's actually gone down. Nathaniel or Tank Dell has gone down. Dalton Schultz is still probably too high of a pick, right? So again, it doesn't really add up to me. I think you can kind of just get some there's too much opportunity cost to take Nico so high at this point. I'm really interested in Mechie and Dell and 19th round, 20th round picks at this point.
Absolutely. And even a guy like Robert Woods, dude, you got a rookie quarterback coming in, a guy who's experienced. I don't think he's washed yet. I do think he could still get you 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, 60 receptions, something just generic like that. But in the 20th round, you can pretty much always get Robert Woods there. So if you're back ending, if you're stacking on the back end here and you're relying on these Houston stacks or any of these other cheap stacks, Robert Woods as a 20th round pick is awesome. Anything else? Okay, so actually Singletary as a narrative coming over. What's that split going to look like? I don't know. Is Singletary the goal line guy? Singletary is always one of these dudes that I just in DFS specifically, he's blah and I kind of stay away from him, but he usually finds a way to screw you. If you fade him, So what are your thoughts on Singletary here? He's going right around that 160 pick. Who's he going around? I think generally I end up kind of getting to him because I need a running back, and that's in like a kind of a running back dead zone. Am I right about that?
I don't know, man. I kind of disagree with you. It really depends on kind of where your draft is going. So in Devin Singletary's range, you got at the running back specifically, you got Roshan Johnson, Kendre Miller, and Jerome Ford.
Yeah.
So it really kind of depends on your outlook on those guys. Obviously, Roshan is a part of a 3-headed deal, potentially a fourth, right? Because the Bears signed Travis Homer, and he's going to make a special team spot.
Yeah.
So I mean, it depends on your feelings there. Kendre Miller, though, he's going to get some early season run.
Oh yeah.
Devin Singletary is fine, right? But I think the thing that we really got to be aware of is just what are you projecting for Dameon Pierce? I really think that he could end up being closer to a James Conner this year than he is to maybe like an Aaron Jones splitting with AJ Dillon.
Yeah.
So like that kind of impacts my ability to really be comfortable taking a guy like Devin Singletary.
Yeah, and Damian Pierce on DraftKings as a guy who can catch the ball to the backfield, his price tag should be much higher on DraftKings because he's going to be able to help you out in that pass game potentially. All right, unless there's any other narratives that you want to talk about, did I miss anything? Obviously, Dalton Schultz coming over, Chigo Okonkwo is going to be a lot more involved. We saw him get involved a little bit last year towards the end of the year. He looks good. This is a tight end that can get the ball out of the backfield as a running back potentially. So I really like Chigo Okonkwo. If you've watched any of our showdown shows last year, we were praising that dude at the end of the year when he was like $200 or like $1,000. I'm still interested in him a lot this year. But let's get into our breakdown. Let's just do it. Break it down. All right, so we've got this chart up. Ellie made this chart. Like he was saying, the open that resembles a mid-June situation. We did have like the very first day or like the first week put up there as far as ADP. It didn't really represent things as well because it was like the first week of drafting and things were kind of all over the place. But as you can see here, Derrick Henry out of both of these teams is going highest. He's going right around 20. You got D-Hop in the 40s. He started when he was, rumored to be going to some of these other teams. He was in the 30s and he went up into the low 40s and he's kind of dropped back down to 39 range. So if you're getting Derrick Henry, right? First of all, how much Derrick Henry do you have? He's in a zone where, you could still get some pretty damn good wide receivers here. Have you been defaulting to the wide receivers considering all this running back talk, as well as D Henry? Yes, he can absolutely crush, but he just doesn't catch the ball to the backfield often. What are your thoughts on Henry? Are you getting him in this range?
A little bit. I have about 10% exposure to him, so I have a little bit of him. I like Derrick Henry. He's gonna have probably 1,700 rushing yards and 12 to 14 touchdowns if he stays healthy. He's just an insane back. Again, I think the thing that we're going to run into is the passing piece. I know him and Nick Chubb, they kind of make up for it because of the amount of volume they get, the amount of rushing yards and the touchdowns, right? But it really does matter when you're talking about PPR. Now, again, in the top 20, I don't think you can really make too poor of an argument to literally take any of the guys that are up there. Just, be wise. Personally, I've been shying a little bit more away from the running back builds. Just trying to get these top end wide receivers. I still think they're being undervalued a little bit on DraftKings.
Yeah.
That the 100-yard bonuses that they can get on a consistent basis, and it's full point PPR. Almost all the content that you can consume is for
underdog.
What is it? Underdog, right? And that's half point.
Yeah.
So you're still missing out the 3-point bonus that you get for the 100 yards, and then you're still missing out on the other half point for reception. So I think that stuff matters. And again, you're going to get similar volume, right? Damian Pierce is going to run the ball most of the time for Houston. James Conner is going to run the ball most of the time for Arizona. And I think you can get those guys, between picks 68 to 72, and you can stack up on wide receivers.
Yeah, so,
in these first 20 rounds.
So to me, generally speaking, I don't go into drafts saying I'm going to get stacks of these teams. I kind of have an idea as to what teams I need more of and things like that. And if it falls in my lap, then great. But, in a situation like this, if I get Derrick Henry, not often am I going, man, I should pick up D-Hop here, unless he falls past ADP or something. Right. You know what I mean? I'm not typically thinking of stacking these two teams or stacking either team individually from the beginning of the draft. It usually ends up happening towards the end. But the problem here is if you don't start planning out your Tennessee stacks, there's really no third wide receiver that you're getting. You got Treylon Burks. Yeah. There's really you can get to the end of the draft and you're getting Nick Westbrook-Akine in the 20th round because you're desperate. So you kind of have to think about this. And for example, if you're getting Derrick Henry, I'm keeping my eyes open for Pierce. I'm keeping my eyes open for some of these. And even if it's Derrick Henry versus Dalton Schultz as a 1v1, I'm just trying to set myself up. If I'm not able to get to Stroud, if I'm not able to get to Tannehill and another pass catcher, that's fine. I'll adapt. But I think that just trying to set these guys up as you go along is probably, maybe at minimum, I have to think more about getting Tennessee and Houston together, but because I just really don't think about it too much. So what is your draft strategy? Let's just say you pick up D. Henry. You're not probably, are you looking to get Hopkins? Like, when do you actually start thinking, oh man, I need to start building stacks here?
So for Derrick Henry, I immediately just started looking at the Houston run backs. I've got that Houston squad pretty much memorized. Like I said, I'm a fan of Alabama. So John Mechie, like ever since he got drafted by the team last year, I've been ready for that team to kind of play. Like Dave, if he would have been a part of the Davis Mills offense last year, he would have crushed. So, I'm excited about this Texans team, as weird as it may sound. So I've been stacking them a pretty decent amount. And again, I just don't think that they're terrible picks in the rounds 18 through 20. Now, I'm not stacking DeAndre Hopkins. Before that signing happened, I did stack him with Derrick Henry a little bit, just because in that range you're looking at top end receivers. I like DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, you have Derrick Henry at your RB1. This means if you take DeAndre Hopkins, he's going to end up as being your wide receiver, probably 3 at worst.
Yeah.
Right. So you're going to be relying on both these guys at a pretty consistent rate. So I don't know if I necessarily recommend stacking really inside the top 50 to
The
60
high end. Yeah.
from
Yeah.
the same team.
Yeah.
But like if you want
Specifically
to go
for,
Derrick Henry, Damian Pierce, right? That's fine. Like I
yeah,
know
yeah,
people are
yeah,
going to say week 17 negative correlation. Like I don't give a shit about that. Like that's still
yeah,
like you can still go get another Houston wide receiver to run back if you feel that worried about it, right?
yeah,
So that's probably my stack. If you do want to stack Tennessee, and you are looking at 2 high end options, I don't mind doing Derrick Henry and Traylon Burks. Right,
yes,
that's
yeah,
fine. That's not going to impact you're spending up so much for DeAndre Hopkins. It's not going to impact you by taking Traylon Burks instead in that case.
yeah, absolutely. So look, Dalton Schultz, he's coming in around 125. I've been finding myself grabbing him as a one-off sometimes, and maybe hoping to get to Stroud. Like if I'm in that range where I have a second quarterback already, and I'm kind of thinking about what am I going to do to close this draft out with my third quarterback if I want one. He's kind of in that range. And usually in that range is kind of where I'm trying to grab some tight ends. That's like round 11. Either I have that stud tight end that I'm getting first few rounds, or I'm getting, mid-round guys in seventh or eighth round. So by this point, if I don't have a tight end, sometimes it happens to me, man. I'm going like 0 tight end sometimes. And
Yeah.
Schultz kind of falls to me here, and that also keeps it open later on for me to grab that CJ Stroud as another stack. Chigo Okonkwo is another guy too. He's in that range. He's dropped quite a bit, which is interesting. He started in mid June around 130. Now he's in 145. That's a little interesting to me. What are your thoughts on Okonkwo? I like him, and I don't get to enough of him for whatever reason.
Okay, so I like Chig. I think he's fine. I think that his adjustment in ADP is kind of warranted, just given the signing of DeAndre Hopkins. It sounds stupid with this analysis, but there's only there's only one ball. You can only get so many offense to all these guys.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry's going to get his. DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to get his, and I really think this is still going to be. You talked about it a little bit before the show. Traylon Burks, man, he doesn't have to be the number 1. You can go out and be a superstar number 2 wide receiver. Everyone's going to double DeAndre Hopkins, right? So this could be a really good situation for him.
Yeah.
So with that said, I just don't know if it's going to end up in just better numbers for Chig. Now, as he continues to slide down a little bit, I do want to capture some of that exposure, because I drafted him early on, right? And so now I'm losing out on those early opportunity costs, right? For taking him as early.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm kind of balancing out my average ADP by getting him later.
Yes.
Now I still think that he is going to slide a little bit, but so my recent drafts have also been a little bit different as of late. I'm going so damn heavy on wide receiver those first several rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going 3 quarterbacks kind of in the later rounds, and I had one draft where I took 4 tight ends like rounds 16 through 20. I had no tight ends going into that point, right? So like I'm starting to like come up like to recognize like unless you have Travis Kelsey or like one of these really like Mark Andrews,
Yeah.
even a guy like TJ Hawkinson, I think has the upside. Like I just don't know that you want to spend. Like let's look at who's next to Dalton Schultz for example. So if you're looking at picks around 126, um, I mean, you got Juju Smith-Schuster, Jamal Williams, Dalton Kincaid,
Yeah.
right? Tyler Boyd.
Kincaid. I mean, I'm
That's all
taking Kincaid every time, and I'm sorry. I'm a
right.
Kincaid truther at this point.
Yeah, I don't like he's as far as I'm concerned, he's gonna be a wide receiver, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I like that. I kind of prefer that. I don't like the tight end position because it's so volatile. So having a guy who can go out and get 5 and 80 every game is nice. That's why I
Yeah.
like Kincaid.
Yeah.
But and then after that, you still got Damian Harris, who's the RB2 in Buffalo, Romeo Dobbs, Rondell Moore, Eli Mitchell, Jacoby. Right. There's still just a lot of guys around that range that I like.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me to kind of end up on guys like Dalton Schultz right now.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So let's talk about Tajay Spears here. So, I know there's a joke going around. If I'm going to draft a running back, I want a running back with an ACL. You got Spears with some knee injuries. At camp so far, he looks to be fine. He's looks to be fast. I don't mind, and usually I end up getting Tajay Spears as a run back to any Houston stacks that I've set up, usually in this range. If I'm drafting in that 9, 10, 11 pick number, I can usually get Stroud, and you can get Stroud and Tajay Spears maybe even back to back as a run back there. But I usually don't have more than one Tennessee run back because you kind of have to make your bed early on if you're going to be doing these stacks from the high end. Thoughts on Spears, and then let's move on. The last thing we'll talk about here is these Houston wide receivers on the lower end and who you prefer. What are your thoughts on Spears?
I don't mind Spears. Derrick Henry is he gets a lot of volume. He's one injury away from this being an ETN situation, right?
Yeah.
Tank Bigsby. Like there's just not a lot of opportunity for Spears unless the guy goes down. And there are going to be times where he does need breaks. I mean, Derrick Henry's a load man. So I actually do have a decent amount of Tajay Spears, and it's mostly just kind of a bet that he's going to do better than guys like Devin Singletary or in that range. To be honest with you,
Yeah.
I don't mind him.
And Spears is clearly going to be, he's probably going to be that guy that comes on third down. He's probably going to be getting some pass catching opportunities. And Hassan Haskins is not a guy that's probably going to, he might be suspended this year. He's got some legal trouble.
Yeah, I'm looking that up right now.
Domestic,
I forgot about that.
domestic situation. So some. I don't know that he's even playing. So to me, it seems like Tajay Spears at round pick 180. He's like one of these guys who has going to have solid playing time this year, unless he gets hurt or unless there's a setback in camp. But as of right now, it seems like he's clearly the number 2 here. So Mechie, Woods, Tank Dell. These guys are all coming in, like Mechie's obviously in the 180s, but, Robert Woods, Tank Dell, or Nathaniel Dell, these are like end of draft dudes that you're usually going to end up grabbing. So when it comes to Mechie, how much Mechie do you have? I seem to be getting a lot more of Mechie than I do Nico Collins at this point. And I'm getting to Robert Woods and Tank Dell a little bit too much, in my opinion. And usually I'll just grab those guys as one-offs if I have to. So thoughts on this hierarchy when it comes to pass catchers for Houston?
Yeah, man. I think it really kind of depends on what you're looking for. John Mechie is probably going to be the guy that's going to be the highest boomer bust. Like think Jamison Williams. Like he could go out and only get 2 catches, but they could be 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Right. So like that, I like him mainly. You guys know my strategy by now, and we're on episode 3, and all I do is talk about how I draft all my wide receivers before round 10. Right. So like by this time, I don't have any reliance on any of these guys. So I'm looking
Yeah.
for the guy who's going to have a massive spike week, and to me that starts with John Mechie.
Mm-hmm.
Then my next would probably be Tank Dell. He had a pretty good. It's CJ Stroud wanted him. He's the guy that he wanted the Texans to draft. After he got drafted, he said, "Hey, draft this guy," and I'm pretty sure he was a 3rd-round pick. Again, like that's just me betting on that relationship a little bit there. I'm not reliant on him to do anything for me, but if he has a game where he has 2 touchdowns, then I'm the guy who's going to benefit on that spike week.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then after that, I think it goes to Robert Woods. I don't know if Noah Brown's going to make the final roster. They have a lot of these young guys, and I think Robert Woods is kind of a good veteran to have on the squad. He's gone through his own injury stuff, but he's also been a part of really high powered offenses like the I mean, we saw him with the Rams. He was doing great over there. So I think he's a good role model to have for Mechie and Tank Dell out there. So I got them in that order: Mechie, Dell, Woods. But rotate them. Don't go into the season with 40% Mechie and 2% Woods. If they're round 20 picks for a reason, kind of get a little bit of exposure to guys that you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
and that makes sense in your build.
Absolutely. So last thing I want to talk about here is the backup quarterback situation for Tennessee. So they haven't given up on Malik Willis yet. I know what did he get, a couple starts last year? He didn't look very good. Maybe it was like one start. He didn't look very good. Didn't seem to be ready. They drafted Will Levis. At the beginning of the season, we thought, oh, man, maybe they're just going to let Will Levis take over. Maybe they're just going to throw him in the fire and see what happens. Doesn't seem to be where this is going. Tannehill seems to be the guy, and if this team can play at above average or even average, he'll probably remain the quarterback. But what are your thoughts here as a flyer in the very last round? Like, if you have a high-end Tennessee guy, are you taking Will Levis? Like, let's say you got Chigo Okonkwo and you need a throwaway quarterback. Let's say you have two decent quarterbacks already, maybe a stud like Mahomes, and maybe you got, I don't know, a mid-round quarterback. Are you grabbing Will Levis as just like a flyer? This is kind of like your Mike White or like your, I don't know, your Trey Lance at this point. You're just you need another body there for quarterback, and you want to correlate. Are you doing any Will Levis here? Because I know that earlier in the season, people were taking him. They were taking him much higher.
Yeah, I have, it's nothing crazy, but I have 7% already. I've gotten a decent amount of some of these guys, Chick and DeAndre Hopkins, Traylon Burks even. So I did get a little bit in the last round to kind of help balance out those stacks.
Yeah, let's look at our lineups here. So let's find. Ellie sent me a couple lineups that he had drafted. So, Ellie, talk to me about this one. This is a Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Derrick Henry in the third round. It seems like you got, who do you got here? Is this a Will Levis situation? Yeah, this is a Will Levis situation. So talk to me about this one.
Yeah, so this one's crazy. I really thought that Will Levis was going to end up. This would have been before DeAndre Hopkins signed. So I did expect Will Levis to be the starting quarterback in Tennessee at this point. Luckily, this is only this is a Patrick Mahomes build, so I'm not expecting Will Levis to start at any point.
Yeah.
But I also chose this lineup because I thought it was pretty interesting, and I stacked the shit out of Minnesota and Green Bay as well too. And then I took a lot of later wide receivers. So like you can kind of see how my drafts evolved. Like I've been talking all day about I'll show about how I got all my wide receivers early. But it's not the case here. 4 rounds without a wide receiver is a pretty unique build to me. But I think getting some of these guys in the later rounds really helped out. So I got Derrick Henry. Who else do we have in the Houston stack here? Robert Woods.
Yeah.
So it's just the 1-1.
Yeah. It's pretty much it. But I think that's fine, dude. Like, I honestly think...
Oh, I got Traylon Burks there.
You got Traylon Burks?
Okay.
Yeah, you do. I honestly think that, a 1v1, a 2v2, even without a quarterback sometimes with these stacks can be fine. The CJ Stroud mixed with a Mechie and a Woods situation, something like that, even just as a third stack to have some correlation, that's ideal to me. I'm usually... Look, honestly, I'm usually taking him as a third stack, most likely. Because I like to either get an elite quarterback like Patrick Mahomes and then grab a dude like Kirk Cousins, in the 8th or 9th round. Or what I'm doing is I'm grabbing like Deshaun Watson and Kirk Cousins. like I'm getting those middle round quarterbacks almost like back-to-back sometimes. And at that point, that's what I'm really looking for, that CJ Stroud stack to kind of finish me off there. Let's go to another one here. This is a Tyreek Hill, Derrick Henry. What do you got? Houston. You got a 2 stack with one run back here. So you got Nico, CJ Stroud, and John Mechie with Derrick Henry run back. That's beautiful. And that works out like game script wise. That works out pretty good. Derrick Henry absolutely crushing Houston. He's got 290 yards and 17 touchdowns. And Houston has to throw the ball to catch up. I mean, that is on paper, that's a solid stack. So what were you thinking here? What else jumps out to you?
I mean, look, the first thing is even here, Nico Collins at 139, still nothing, nowhere near what we were paying for him earlier on, or what we're paying for him right now.
Yeah.
This one's a little bit more of what I would expect when it comes to building for my tight ends as well. I got Darren Waller in the earlier in round 7, and then just stacked on the back end with Jelani Woods and CJ Azoma. Um, which, by the way, guys, don't sleep on Jelani Woods. Like, man, I really think he's going to be tight end one in Indianapolis, but we'll get
Yeah.
there someday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all I had on this one, man. Prayers that Desmond Ritter is actually being good
Oh
and
my God.
is actually accurate, but other than that, I'm not too concerned about that one.
Dude, we should do Atlanta Chicago next because I have so much of those stacks. I have so much of those guys as one-offs. I have so much Ritter, Patterson, London, all those dudes. I mean, I have
so much Drake London, man.
much, and it's scary. But man, I'm telling you, if they could just have an above average season, I mean, look, that team last year wasn't that bad. Like, at a certain point in the season, they said, screw you, Mariota. We're just the season's a wash sort of situation. That's not a bad team. Anyways, okay, we should stop talking about Atlanta. That's a preview for our next one. So let's wrap this up. It seems to me, like, based on all the 160 drafts at this point that I've done and months of doing this, Houston is a nice back end stack that you want to get to. And don't be afraid to take one-offs from Tennessee because maybe you can get a Tannehill as a third quarterback in the 19th round or whatever. What are your overall general thoughts on these stacks, and how do you feel about them? Are you avoiding? Are you going out of your way to try to get some more as we get closer to the season? Now that we kind of know that Tannehill's the guy, now that we know kind of where these wide receivers for Houston are going.
Not really. I think the one issue that comes up with me is just early running backs. It's still August 3rd, right? We still have all of training camp. He sprains his ankle, he's out for the year, and all your Derrick Henry lineups are fucked. So, like, it's hard for me to take running backs this early, so I'm not going to be targeting that stack.
Yeah.
Now, I do love Houston on the back end. It's just so easy to do whatever you need to. If you need a random third quarterback and a couple wide receivers, it's great to cover a bye week. So that's really my approach there. Traylon Burks is a guy that I'm going to keep my eye on, though. He's in a very interesting spot for ADP. So I can balance out some of my like Cortland Sutton exposure with some Traylon Burks now instead. So,
and Burks has looked good in camp apparently. Tank Dell has looked good. John Mechie has looked good. So keep an eye on.
I don't think anybody's looked bad yet, man. Like,
I mean,
except for Desmond Ritter.
Oh, really? Shit. What I've been doing a lot, it's been really nice. This is why I love YouTube. Is just search for some of these teams and their training camp on YouTube, and you find a lot of these independent channels that are covering this stuff, and they're going deep into these players. They're not specifically talking fantasy. They're talking about actual players on the field playing. They could spend an hour talking about defense, but a lot of these times you're able to get some really good information from some of these independent creators. So, anyways, Ellie, what are we doing next, man? Hey, you know what? I think we need to do for those of you who are into watching our showdown content. I think they just released the Draftkings salary for that first Thursday night game. I think we should do like a early first look at that. What do you think?
Let's do it, dude.
All right, we'll do that, and then keep an eye out for this Chicago-Atlanta team breakdown. Next time, we will see you guys later.